Today, I'm very excited to introduce the concept of the secretor status. This is a step up to create a more customized food plan for you. If you're dealing with troubling chronic health problems or you like to further refine your personal profile, you may choose to go deeper into exploring your biochemical individuality by determining your secretor status. And I'll show you how later on in this video. Although there are four blood types, types A, B, O, and AB, it would be an oversimplification to suggest that there are only four types of people in the world. The reality is far more intricate and complex. Subtyping your blood type, especially your secretor status, provides an even more refined way of identifying your bioindividuality. Now let's take a look at the distinction between the basic ABO blood typing system and the secretor status from the genetic perspective. Your ABO blood type is controlled by your genetics. The gene coding for your blood type lies on the chromosome 9q34. However, a separate gene called FUT2 actually interacts with your blood type gene and determines your ability to secrete your blood type antigens into your body fluids and tissues. So in the secretor system, there are two options. A person can be either a secretor or a non-secretor. This is completely independent of whether you are a blood type A, B, AB, or O. And this means that someone can be an A secretor or an A non-secretor, a B secretor or a B non-secretor, an O secretor or an O non-secretor, or an AB secretor or an AB non-secretor. A secretor is a person who secretes their blood type antigens into bodily fluids and secretions, like saliva, mucus in the lining of your digestive tract, sweat, tears, sperm, and breast milk, etc. Basically, what this means is that a secretor puts their blood type into these body fluids. A non-secretor, on the other hand, puts little to none of their blood type into these same fluids. In general, about 20% of the US population are non-secretors, with the remaining 80% being secretors. So, if you don't know your secretor status, you're most likely a secretor. However, if the general food list for your blood type doesn't seem to work very well for you, or if you have chronic troubling health issues, you might want to consider finding out if you are a non-secretor. If you are a non-secretor, it means your body lacks the enzyme that builds certain prebiotic sugars, including blood type antigens, in your mucosal areas. This means it's very difficult for you to maintain and nourish the good bacteria that are needed for a healthy microbiome. How does your secretor status influence your health? We don't know yet exactly why nature made some of us secretors and some of us non-secretors. But a good guess is that the secretor status is related to nature's effort to provide an additional layer of protection that didn't exist for the earliest humans. The secretor state was most likely an immunologic adaptation. When you're able to secrete your blood type antigens into your body fluids, these secretions appear to create a barrier against environmental elements such as bacteria, pollutants, and other irritants. Based on available scientific information, being able to secrete blood type into your saliva, mucus, etc., allows for an added degree of protection against the environment, particularly with respect to microorganisms and lectins. An additional advantage of being a secretor might be a generalized tendency to promote a stabilized, blood type-friendly intestinal bacterial ecosystem. Many of the friendly bacteria in your digestive system actually use your blood type as one of the preferred foods. Since secretors have a steady supply of blood type in the mucus that lines the digestive tract, these friendly bacteria have a much more constant food supply. So, being a non-secretor seems to be a potential health disadvantage. Because of the lack of this natural protection from blood type antigens in their secretions, non-secretors are prone to many diseases. Let's explore them further. The digestive system. Non-secretors have a much lower level of active intestinal alkaline phosphatase, or IAP. It has been estimated that the serum alkaline phosphatase activity of non-secretors is only about 20% of the active one in the secretor groups. That means non-secretors break down high-protein foods in a less efficient manner than secretors. Non-secretors are at an increased risk for development of celiac disease. Up to 48% of patients with celiac disease have been reported to be non-secretors. A higher intensity of oral disease is also found among non-secretors. This includes dysplasia or precancerous changes to the tissue and an increase in cavities. Statistically speaking, blood type A secretors have the lowest number of cavities. Non-secretors also tend to have more digestive problems. Several studies have indicated that non-secretors have a significantly higher rate of duodenal and peptic ulcers. Non-secretors are also less resistant to infection by the H. pylori, which is a microbe associated with ulcers. It appears that this organism can colonize more readily and generate more inflammation in individuals incapable of secreting their blood type into the digestive tract. Non-secretors are also more prone to leaky gut syndrome. When it comes to the immune system, non-secretors are also more prone to frequent urinary tract infections, Crohn's disease, candida, bacterial infections, and other gut type conditions. And when it comes to the autoimmunity, non-secretors appear to have an increase in the prevalence of a variety of autoimmune diseases, including ankylosing spondylitis, reactive arthritis, psoriatic arthropathy, Sjogren's syndrome, multiple sclerosis, and Graves' disease. Now let's take a look at the issue of blood clotting. Blood type impacts the blood clotting ability to a significant degree. Blood type O individuals have the lowest amount of the clotting factor, known as the von Willebrand factor, or VWF, whereas type A individuals have the highest amount. Now, if we look at the secretor subgroups, secretors have the slowest clotting, while non-secretors have faster clotting, which means that they have shorter bleeding time. ABO and secretor genetics further interact to influence the thickness of the blood, or blood viscosity. This means that an A non-secretor will be at the far end of the spectrum with the slowest bleeding times, thickest blood viscosity, and the most probability to have high platelet concentration. On the other end of this continuum are the O secretors, who will have the longest bleeding time, thinnest blood, and least tendency for platelet aggregation. Because of this, non-secretors, especially type A non-secretors, tend to be at the highest risk for future heart disease. Now let's take a look at the respiratory system. When it comes to lung function, Being a non-secretor is, again, a health disadvantage. Several researchers have suggested that being a non-secretor might predispose an individual to damaging effects, while being a secretor might add a degree of protection against harmful environmental assaults to our lungs. Among coal miners, for example, asthma was significantly related to the non-secretor phenotype. Secretors also appear to receive a degree of protection against some of the serious effects of cigarette smoking. Evidence also suggests that being a secretor may decrease the risk of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD. Let's take a look at diabetes, heart disease, and metabolic syndrome X. Non-secretors are at a greater risk of developing diabetes, especially adult onset diabetes or type 2 diabetes. They may also be at a greater risk of developing complications from diabetes. Existing data show that non-secretors are a risk factor for myocardial infarction and heart disease. And this is particularly true for men. Syndrome X. Several different researchers have noted a connection between a metabolic syndrome called Syndrome X and non-secretor blood types. Syndrome X is a clustering of metabolic problems comprised of insulin resistance, which means your cells do not respond effectively to the insulin that you create, elevated plasma glucose, which means high blood sugar, lipid regulation problems, which includes elevated triglycerides, increased small, low-density lipoproteins, and decreased high-density lipoproteins. Syndrome X also includes high blood pressure, tendency to clotting, and obesity, especially central obesity or a predisposition to gaining weight in the abdominal area. This cluster of metabolic disorders seem to interact to promote the development of type 2 diabetes, atherosclerosis, and cardiovascular diseases. And while insulin resistance might be at the heart of the problem, all of these metabolic disorders appear to contribute to health problems. Alcoholism. Alcoholism has been associated with the non-secretor blood type. On the positive side, alcohol consumption appears to exert a protective effect on the lung function and to lower the risk of heart disease, more so in non-secretors than in secretors. The key principle with the use of alcohol is for non-secretors, and everybody actually, to consume alcohol in moderate amounts. After talking about so many health disadvantages, it's not all gloom and doom for non-secretors. Being a non-secretor actually makes you less likely to become ill from most strains of norovirus or the stomach flu. Norovirus seems to need the blood group antigens to attach to the intestinal wall. So if you are a non-secretor, it's very likely that you have never gotten the stomach flu, or very rarely. So what does it mean, really, to be a non-secretor? Being a non-secretor, or what we blood type dieters call a noni, doesn't necessarily mean that you are doomed and will have a whole host of diseases following you throughout your life. It just means that you need to pay more attention to what you eat and the irritants in the environment. Even wool or polyester materials can make you super irritated, so switch to cotton instead. Knowledge is power. If you know your secretor status, then you'll be able to refine your food choices. This is a form of intervention and will help you stay away from the many diseases you are prone to. Luckily, when it comes to making food choices, all the work has been done by Dr. Peter Diadamo. His food database contains values for both secretors and non-secretors. So let me show you how to find out the secreted and non-secreted value for each food. You go to Diadamo, DADAMO.com, and scroll down to go to food values. And you're going to type here the food that you want to search. For example, avocado, and click on it and scroll down. You'll see the values for different blood types, and these values pertain to secretors. If you go down a little bit, you'll see a little checkbox here, show non-secretor values. So just check, and then you will see if you are a non-secretor, whether avocado is a beneficial, neutral, or an avoid for you. And for me, I'm an O non-secretor, so lucky me, I can have avocados as a beneficial food. The values of most common foods are the same for both secretors and non-secretors. However, there are some common types of foods that are okay for most people, but should be avoided by non-secretors. Knowing your secretor status will ensure that you're not eating these foods on a regular basis. One example is sugar. Non-secretors don't metabolize sugar very well, so sugar, whether it's white or brown, is an avoid for nonnies across all blood groups. The differences between the two secretor groups are more prominent within type A. Type A non-secretors can have a much wider selection of animal protein. So if you are type A and happen to love meat, then you may be delighted if you turn out to be a non-secretor. On the other hand, if you are a meat eater and turn out to be a secretor, you do need to consider weaning off of most animal protein in order to achieve optimal health, especially to protect your delicate stomach from ulcers and cancer and your heart from heart diseases. For type B, while secretors can have coffee occasionally as a neutral beverage, it's actually an avoid for non-secretors. So if you are a type B coffee lover, or if you are addicted to coffee, you might look into your secretor status to check if you should avoid it or not. And for me, as a type O nani, I used to eat granola, which contains oat, day in and day out for my breakfast. When I found out that I'm a non-secretor, it dawned on me that this supposedly healthy breakfast for all was actually giving me stomach ache. Another example is soy. Soy milk is neutral for type O secretors, but it turns out it's an avoid for non-secretors. No wonder I always got scratchy throats whenever I drank it. It was a beverage I drank regularly as a child. Being a nani doesn't necessarily mean you can enjoy fewer foods than secretors. As a type O nani, for example, I have the privilege of enjoying avocado as a beneficial food, as I told you earlier, whereas it's an avoid for other types except for type A, who can have it as a neutral food only. So how do you find out your secretor status? Well, Dr. Diadamo has done blood testing for secretor, non-secretor status for years. Through an arrangement he made with the lab, you can order an at-home genomic test kit to determine your secretor status. It's a simple saliva swab test that needs to be returned to the lab, and you'll get your result online after a few weeks. Alternately, if you have previously done a genetic test, such as with 23andMe, check your FUT2 gene on your genetic report or look for RS601338 in your raw data. A double plus, or AA, means that you are homozygous and a non-secretor, and you are heterozygous A/G for FUT2 gene, then you are a secretor. The third way to find out your secretor status is to ask your doctor to conduct a Lewis blood type test for you. If the result is A minus B plus, you are a secretor. If the result is A plus B minus, then you are a non-secretor. However, the other combination, A minus B minus, can't be used to determine your secretor status. And A plus B plus is yet another combination, but that's really rare. So this test is not the best test to determine your secretor status. The FUT2 gene is not like other genes because this one is not one you can change the expression of by changing or cleaning up your environment or your diet. So if you are a non-secretor, you will always be a non-secretor. If you find out that you're a nani, don't despair. I know of many nanis and they're managing their health very well with a more precise way of eating based on their secretor status. They also happen to have personalities that don't fit into the majority mode and embrace themselves just as they are. I urge you to find out if you are a secretor or a non-secretor. Knowing the result will help you achieve a higher level of health and well-being.